Hello, welcome to Live America podcast. This is Hatem alongside me, the funny comedian and good friend podcaster Boris Khaykin. Hello, Boris.
Hello, hello.
We have a great guest today. I'm very looking forward to this is some of the conversations that I think all of us have at dinner tables or whatever. So it's very it's going to be a great guest, a great conversation. I already know it. Andrew Crapuchettes. He is the founder and CEO of Red Balloon. He started Red Balloon in 2021 as a solution to cancel culture and wokeness at workplace. Basically, he's saying he's trying to find the right employees based on ability and not identity or politics, anything like that. Did I get this right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's exactly it. Back to what made America great in the first place: meritocracy, hard work, all that kind of stuff.
All right, perfect. So tell us a little bit about Red Balloon and then we'll start asking questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so Red Balloon, I'll back up a little bit. I was the CEO of a pretty large tech company. I've started a lot of businesses. I've had six successful exits over the years from various different businesses, ranging from $100,000 to $500 million. So really all over the gamut, but generally in the technology space. But 2020 came around and I was the CEO of a business that I'd founded, but I'd sold. So I didn't have ownership. I was just a salaried employee, and my board basically said, "Look, Andrew, you're too conservative and Christian for our liking, and that's just not allowed." And this is 2020 when everybody kind of lost their mind on COVID and all the other things going on in the world. So, and I basically told them I'm not willing to, not bring my whole self to work to kind of rip that piece out of me. We don't have customers complaining about me. We don't have employees complaining about me. You're just nervous because I'm not going to jump on social media and say things that'll be super polarizing to at least half our customers. So, anyway, long story boring. I ended up leaving that business in early 2021, and I was going to take a year off. I'm doing a real estate project, big housing development. I've got commercial real estate. I've got plenty of things to, say grace over. But a friend kind of challenged me. They said, "Look, you just had to choose between your job and your values." And there's going to be a lot of Americans who are going to be put in that same boat where they're going to have to choose between their job and their values. And if we want to keep America free, we need to have the workplace be free as well. And so I'm like, okay, fine, I will strap in for this. I actually created the job board, and it was just Red Balloon just started just as a simple job board with a thesis around freedom. Basically, if you're an employer and you think the Constitution's a good thing and you're going to protect the freedom of your current and future employees, you're welcome. And if you're a job seeker who thinks that it is a good thing to show up and work hard and capitalism's not a bad thing, you're also welcome. So it wasn't that complicated, but I was the only one saying these things. And then the COVID vaccine came around like literally 2 months after I founded Red Balloon. And my stance was, look, if your employee's an adult, and most of them are, they should, if they want to get a vaccine, knock themselves out. But they should have that conversation with their doctor, not their HR department. And in 2021, there were very few people willing to say that on out loud. And so I ended up being on a lot of TV shows and radio shows and all these things. Well, and anyway, this little business that I had not planned on really running because I was going to play golf and do real estate, all of a sudden we had thousands of businesses and millions of job seekers. And it's like, okay, Lord, I guess this is the thing that I'm doing. So there you go. Ta-da, redballoon.work. We are the nation's leading pro-freedom job board. We do recruitment for organizations like Tucker Carlson Network, for national religious broadcasters. And now we have hiring software. So if you want to run a hiring process that is focused on values and values alignment rather than the latest DEI trend, Red Balloon's a company for you. Ta-da, there it is. There's my story. I'm sticking with it.
Well, thank you so much. Well, I think now it's a little
You
bit
got the pitch
easier.
down.
Yeah,
Got it down. I've said it once or twice. Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
you guys are the coolest people I've ever talked to. But
Like easier now than, fighting it back during COVID a little bit,
that's
isn't it?
right.
Yeah. So the one thing, I always say if one person taking one side and not the other, there's something wrong with it because both sides have always something right and something wrong. And one of the, I think, interviews or articles I read about you, which I think was good, was that you said it's not that they want, like if company says, "Hey, I only want vaccinated people," it's like no. And if company said, "I only want non-vaccinated people," you also say no. It's not
That's
about
right.
that.
That's
And
right.
yeah, and can you touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, the issue is it's around freedom and actually letting people make their own decisions and what you as a business actually have authority over, right? If my business, if I'm working for a business and they're like, you already have 5 kids, you shouldn't have six, I'd be like, none of your business. Like, that's nothing that you have a say over. And so really it's just understanding where the spheres of authority are. And I believe that businesses have no authority to determine medical procedures for their employees. And as such, that was kind of out of bounds. Look, we want freedom. We do think that if you're a business and you are enforcing a worldview on your employees, one worldview or the other, you need to be very, very careful, right? And let me give you an example. So I started with I'm an unapologetic conservative Christian and I'm a CEO. I've been a CEO of a number of different businesses. And so I would have I've hired thousands of people over the years. And if I was the final interview for a person, I'd say, hey, I just want you to know who I am, right? I am living my values out loud. I'm not sorry about that. That's just who I am. But everybody's allowed to, right? If you come to this business, it's not a prerequisite that you agree with me. In fact, I think it's unhealthy if everybody in a company is lockstep exactly thinking the exact same thing. You want diversity of ideas, you want diversity of experience, you want people who are willing to push back. In fact, I'll tell employees, if you come in my office and say, Andrew, you as a CEO are doing a terrible job in this area or that area, I might give you a raise because I know I have blind spots and I know you're going to have different experience, different perspective. And that's where diversity of ideas comes from. That's where innovation comes from. The issue is when you consider skin color to be diversity rather than diversity of background or ideas, right? I could have someone who is black, who has almost the exact same life experience that I do, and we're going to have very similar perspective. Or I might have someone from Brooklyn and I'm from California and I now live in Idaho who's going to have great connections, experience, perspective that's totally different than mine. Well, I need to hire based on those differences and ideas that are going to push against each other, going to feel the friction of innovation within a business and not just do a skin deep diversity, but actually a diversity of ideas. And if you have a different skin color, fantastic. Like but that's not the point. The point is, do you have great ideas? Are you willing to work hard? And are you going to bring value to my business, regardless of something external like who your parents are?
Well, so I have a question. All that sounds very appealing to me. When I look at the website and you use wording like anti-woke, are you
Yes.
worried that there's because even within the like DEI like opposite side of all of this, you have people that are, let's say, well-meaning, but I think don't realize how gameable so many of these things are, and that you have people that when you're advertising that you want to like promote diversity in a visual way where you have one black guy and one Asian and one whatever else. You're
Right.
gonna have people that are gonna exploit that. You're gonna have people. I mean, you'd have to be blind to not see like people that are absolute morons that have become like bestsellers and that go on national tours, and you don't have
Right.
people. Well, so in the same way, are you worried that you might have people who, when, because anti woke now, it's probably very like geographic based, but like in Brooklyn, where it's like sort of a liberal bubble, anti woke now carries its own sort of label where like there's people who define themselves that way and identify that way, and they maybe don't espouse the same values in terms of what you're describing. They
Right.
maybe on the surface do, but in reality, if you say stuff they don't like, they might want to get you fired. If
Right.
so are you worried about the site's marketing attracting people like that who are at their heart people who, if they grew up in a part of Brooklyn instead of a part of Idaho, they might be in a different cult,
Yeah.
so to speak.
just to
Instead
just
of
say the
being
C word out loud.
well, whatever it is,
For sure.
some people have a proclivity towards like a religious like view. That's what sort of happens
Yeah.
on the left is they don't have religion, and so they and I say we don't have religion. I'm not a religious person, but I see people
Right.
around me who have
Yeah.
this similar void that they fill with like a leftist ideology, essentially.
For
So
sure.
are you
Yeah.
worried about people when you have words like anti-woke attracting people that don't really have those values and more just have like surface level words that they associate with?
Yeah, no, it's legitimate concern, and the reality is branding is so hard. But I'm going to first hit this. I'll start from a business perspective. There are literally 1,000 job boards. There are actually thousands of job boards in the United States. Lots of little niche job boards, and we know about the big ones: Indeed and ZipRecruiter and Monster and Dice. But the list goes on and on and on, and they're focused on different areas. So if I started Red Balloon as, we'll call it, a generic job board of like, hey, I'm out here, businesses, people, you should find each other, ta-da. I would have failed right off the bat as a business because I'm now entering extremely crowded waters on a business front, right? Because you need to, Indeed spends $1 billion a year on marketing, and I don't have $1 billion. So I would have to come up with something else. So anytime you start a business, you do want to find your niche, and the farther down you can niche it so that you're focused on exactly a small market that you can build from and then you can expand from, that's actually a good business strategy. So just on a business strategy, we had to differentiate ourselves, and nobody else was willing to say anti-woke. I would say now we're
4 years
starting to.
ago, they weren't willing to say
Yeah, nobody
it.
was
Yeah.
willing to say that in 2021, right? And I was a lone voice in the wilderness, saying, "Hey, we need to get back to merit and hard work," right? Ta-da! So that being said, we do need to be careful because we've had people who are, I'll say, right-wing extremists on various topics, or left-wing extremists. In fact, we've had a lot of hippies, just to call them out. I'm not going to name anybody. We had a lot of hippies come to Red Balloon because they're like, hey, I don't like this communism. I don't like these vaccines, whatever it is, right? Um, and we're like, look, the point is you need to be hiring people who can provide the best value for your business. And that is actually a good thing for people to have the opportunity to work hard and not be kind of pigeonholed into any category. And I think your call out is right because at the end of the day, Marxism, the whole point of Marxism is that everybody gets put into a category. They're either oppressed or oppressor. They're, proletariat or bourgeoisie. They are someone who has to be put into a category. I don't want people to be put into a category. I want them to be like, look, the whole American dream is I didn't go to college. I have just busted tail to build businesses, build wealth for my family, try and change the lives of others, bless other people. That's what you should be judged on, not based on any of these other different categories. So there is a danger in branding, that you're going to get some people who are, extremists one way or the other. We're starting to transition our branding now more into the pro freedom side rather than the anti woke. Part of that is also I like to focus more on the positive than the negative. But look, there's a danger in all these things. We have had very few businesses who have signed up on Red Balloon who were like, you know what? You're just not a good fit for who we are. And I'll give you a couple examples because you should know. The first one was a Chinese porn site. And I'm like, look, you're probably not trying to hire anybody. I think you're trying to sell porn. Um, and they don't speak English, so I have no idea. But that was an example. There was also another company who on their front page, and they were a company that was selling, I think they were selling baskets, and they were in California. And you go to their front page, and it was all about BLM and Black Square, and these are the things that they believe in. Push, push, push. And we got on the phone. We're like, look, you're not going to get people to apply from Red Balloon because they want to work for a company that focuses on what the business of that company is, not on some big political issue out there. And so they're like, oh, I guess I didn't even think about that. So actually, I don't even care about that stuff that much. And I keep that in my personal life, and I'm going to focus on making baskets. I'm like, great, then you are welcome. But I at least had that conversation with them. So, you look at Silicon Valley Bank, and I know people at Silicon Valley Bank who ended up leaving or when they failed, and they said, we did weekly microaggression training. We spent so much time and energy on not banking, on spending time, doing DEI training, on ESG training, on microaggression training. This person said, I saw the risks in the business, but if I knew that if I said anything to the credit department, it'd be considered a microaggression. I'd be tarred and feathered and fired. And so they didn't allow for communication or any of those things. So again, all of what we're trying to do is get business back to the business of their business rather than the political correctness that's out there.
Well, let me
Is Yeah, so there you go. Sorry, that was more of an answer than maybe you're looking for.
Yeah, let me ask you this. Because I understand that the number one thing that employee want is a good employer, and
Yes.
vice versa. But when you say like and all these stuff, when it started, it wasn't bad. It had an idea, and there was a
Yeah.
reason for it to start. Discrimination stuff like where it went when politicians take it to make it more political and people
Yeah.
use it to their own thing. That what makes it bad, but doesn't mean it's bad. Because there is a history that we all know of, discrimination, not a lot of opportunity and stuff like that. And that's what the I like kind of provided a little bit. Obviously, it went way beyond, and it become, something that like you said, like people focus on versus the actual work. But
Right.
where do you draw the line? Like, because you know that you're gonna have some, and I don't say this lightly, but there are racist people, right? Against even white people, there's race
Right.
against everybody. So, so you will be, how do you draw the line where like you're protecting, the discrimination you protect? I know it's not your job, but in your idea, in your business model or your, company mission, like
Right.
uh your core mission, I 100% agree with, is like you want to get the right employee to play to work for the right employer.
Right.
And Noam, who's not here today, is that you always have this saying was like, what happened to us? We built the Empire State Building in 8 months. Now it takes, so yeah,
Right.
things are even like the space war. It's like we used to be the best and first in everything,
Right.
but also there's a bad history, and also
Right.
there's bad stuff. So what is the core? Because I would see like maybe like some people will misunderstand what you're doing and say like, oh, I'm a racist business. I don't want this kind of people, whatever that kind of people are,
Right. Right.
and that would be a perfect fit for me without getting into a legal trouble. What would you say?
Right. Yeah. No,
So
it's
I
a good
guess there's
question.
two
And
sides. What's the line? And then the other is like, how do you not attract those people and say like, we're not that?
right. And and I'll pick on, there absolutely was racism and discrimination, and we think that is evil and wrong. Just make sure that I'm on the record. So if you're a racist business out there and you think, man, Red Balloon's my safe haven where I can go and do all my nasty sins to other human beings, that's not it. That's not who Red Balloon is. We care, we focus on merit, and I'd even say like, I'm gonna pick on unions. I think when unions started, there was actually a lot of value for protecting people, right? You had children working in coal mines. You had, things that we would say, that was not a good idea, and those employers were not taking care of people in the way that they should. I don't think that there's the same need for unions anymore. We're in a different kind of economy. We have a different kind of labor market. There may be little niche cases in that, but unfortunately, things that start out well sometimes go sideways. And so, did DEI ever have a purpose in the workplace? I would say it was a wrong implementation to solve a problem. Because, yes, if an employer is discriminating based on skin color one way or the other, it is a wrong thing to do. I had a VP, a guy that was working for me who was black. He was a sales rep. He was fantastic, and I promoted him to VP of sales. And he came in my office. He's like, "I need to know, am I getting this promotion because of my skin color or because of what I've accomplished here at the organization?" I'm like, "No, I think it would be insulting to give you this promotion because of your skin color, because that's saying you're not as good as your coworkers. It's saying that you need help to get a promotion because of your skin color. You did it because you're the best person for the job." He's like, "Okay, then I'll take the job, and otherwise I wouldn't, because it would just, it's demoralizing. The guy, the guys and gals under him would never follow him if they knew he's not the best person for the job, but he got it because of who his parents were, right?" And so we think that discrimination is wrong all the way around. And businesses who are doing that honestly are going to fail, right? And I'll pick on a different discrimination, not the racial discrimination, but gender discrimination, right? Okay, so women earn less in the workplace, and people say if women are earning less and they can do just as much or more than their male counterparts, then businesses are shooting themselves in the foot by not hiring those females. Generally, I would say I'd love to see the free market work that out, not the government work that out. Because anytime the government gets involved, things kind of go sideways. They get big, they get bloated, and there are weird incentives that are introduced into the relationship. If in fact, moms who have taken a gap to raise kids and now want to come back into the workplace are you know the best workers, then smart businesses are actually going to figure out how to use those people, and businesses who are going to discriminate against them because they're female are going to lose out in the marketplace. They're not going to get the best workers. In fact, at Red Balloon, we do a ton of recruiting for a lot of these businesses, right, all over the country. And I have found that moms who are maybe have kids going to school have a lot of wisdom when it comes to people, right? They can get on a Zoom interview and be like, you're going to be a problem. We're not going to recommend you to one of our employers. So I have super flexible hours. I say, look, if you want to come in right when you drop your kids off at school and leave at 3 o'clock because you want to be there when they get home from school, fantastic. Well, that's the free market making sure that I am giving opportunities to those people, and I'm winning because of that. Because other employers are like, look, it's 9 to 5 or nothing, and so we're only going to hire men who aren't moms. Well, honestly, that's a different problem, and they're just losing out on phenomenal talent. So. Anyway, I don't know if I answered your question, but no, discrimination is wrong. DEI, I think, was a poor solution to a real problem.
Do you think with the free market solving these types of things, it's sort of almost hurts your business in a way? Because I mean, obviously, over the past 4 years so much has changed already,
Right.
where like the rest of the country is almost catching up to what you're trying to do. And then
Yes.
at the same time, without naming them, for instance, I work with this company. They're a media
Name
company.
them. Do it.
You might be able to figure it out, but I'm not going to name them because I might share other details that would get me in trouble. But basically, they promote a lot of like communist drivel in a lot of their videos and a lot of their
Yeah.
articles and things like that. And eventually, what happened was they were not, as a company, because no company in their right mind would, living into the standards that they're preaching about and what their media publishes. And
Hmm.
so you started to have employees unionize, and you started to have employees demand that the company make content that is, anti-capitalist content that doesn't make money.
Right.
So you start having a little insurrection within the company, essentially, and they start having layoffs. And then, of course, these are people who don't believe companies should be able to have layoffs, beyond
Right.
even just be profitable or function as a business. And so there's sort of a free market solution to where some of these companies, I think, were kept afloat by low interest rates and money that could be injected into them on speculation based on what was popular in the zeitgeist with a lot of this messaging. And now that there's the money's not so free anymore, it's sort of the free market kind of, part of it they're saying because Trump was reelected that these companies are dropping DEI. But part of it is also just before any of that even happened, some of these companies started imploding because what they were doing wasn't sustainable in the first place
That's
because
right.
they weren't focused on running a business. So
Yeah.
the free market also in a way is your competition, sort of, because it takes out some of the companies that are not adhering to the values that you guys are marketing explicitly.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And in one sense, this is going to sound funny. I wish that Red Balloon was not necessary. But over the last 4 years, and I'll pick on Indeed because they're the biggest job board out there and they're the biggest by a mile, just so you know. They have something like 600 million unique visitors on their site every month. So it's crazy. They were canceling businesses that described themselves as freedom loving or God fearing. If you described yourself, you weren't requiring that in the job posting. And we heard from construction companies and mechanics, car dealers who said, we are freedom loving and God fearing. And Indeed said that's a violation of our community standards. You may not post jobs. You may not participate in this marketplace that we have for labor because of that fact. We also, and obviously that's on the employer side, and we have thousands of stories on the job seeker side where people were at work and there was a lady at Microsoft who was told she had an American flag for her Zoom background or her Teams background, as probably was the case at Microsoft. And she was told, take that off because it's triggering to some of our employees. And
The
you will
flag.
get fired if you don't do that. An American flag, right?
Wow.
And she recorded it because she's like, holy moly,
How is
this is
that
out of
legal?
control. They're an employer, and in one sense, this is back to my free market thing. Like, if you're an employer and you want to do that, knock yourself out. Well, what are you doing? You're now demoralizing one of your great employees who's like, you know what, I'm not loyal to Microsoft. I don't care about this job, and I'm going to quiet quit, as they call it, where I'm going to show up every day, but I'm going to be looking for another job and just trying to look for a way to get out of here and not providing value for my employer. Well, that's where the market's going to work it out.
Yeah.
I think that that's wrong because we're in America and all those things, but they have their prerogative. And if Indeed.com decides that they don't want to post jobs for businesses that say freedom loving and God fearing, but they spent like many, many millions of dollars on DEI training for their employees, their prerogative, but the market's going to work that out and that's going to hurt it. I'm not worried about that hurting the Red Balloon kind of market. There are so many small businesses that we've been able to bless. I would just love to see a return to merit in America, even if it makes, Red Balloon less necessary.
Well, I think, first of all, speaking of, you wish that Red Balloon didn't have to exist. I think, I don't remember which dating app is this, but I think one of the best taglines commercial-wise of this that is like, our goal is for you to delete this app.
You're right. Yeah. To be
Yeah,
done. Right.
I can't
Yeah.
remember
Yeah.
which one,
I don't
but
remember it is. Yeah. I remember
that's
the
so
commercial. They like
smart.
put their logo in a blender or something
Yeah.
like, you'll never
Oh,
need this
yeah.
again. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
it's like so, that's the point of that app is you meet someone or get
Right.
married or whatever, and you delete the app, So
Right.
that's a brilliant marketing.
But there's sort of like a double-edged sword there, right? Because kind of the same way that there's a criticism of government bureaucracies, where once a thing exists, the goals of that entity become self-sustaining.
Oh,
And
for sure.
so theoretically the goal of DEI programs is so that they no longer have to exist.
Yeah,
The
but
goal
that's
of
but
the civil rights law and any kind of government body that's meant to deal with solving racism or solving any
Yeah.
inequality.
If we actually solved it, they're not needed anymore. They're out of a job. They're not going to like that.
yeah,
Right.
Right.
There's
yeah,
a
yeah,
reason why the ACLU is going like outside of their normal scope and taking stances on stuff during that whole time period of Black Lives Matter that
Right.
normally seemed so the opposite of when they were defending the Klan's rights to march and like things like that.
Right.
And same with like what is it, the Anti-Defamation League similarly having like some
Yeah.
wild takes the past couple of years.
And the
So
Southern
is
Poverty
there,
Law Center and all those people. Yeah.
right, so are you like personally at the helm at Red Balloon to ensure that there isn't that kind of like scope creep or shift? Is
Yeah.
there a board? How do you think about that with the company in terms of like, well, we're trying to solve this, but also are we going to start looking for the microaggression version of someone being woke? One
Yes.
example I saw recently, and being partly cynical, but like you saw they released those messages. I think it was the NSA where you had like what was supposed to be like a DEI like trans group or something like that, and they were like messaging on the company messages. So this is where the line probably got crossed, but messaging
Right.
on company messages, all this stuff about like seemed like a bunch of like sex shit basically that trans people were messaging about. But then
Right.
the other half of me is kind of like, I thought we were okay with locker room talk. Why are we firing people for locker room talk? This just sounds like a gay locker room. So is there some scope creep where there might, I'm assuming you guys are using new tech if you're training
Yeah.
LLMs or something like that in order to look out for language. Is there a worry in, or are there mechanisms to avoid a scope creep that can kind of um, exclude companies for being woke that aren't actually woke, but that are, when you're looking for
Yeah.
particular words or something like that?
Well, I'd say there's two kinds of scope creep that I'm very much concerned about. And yes, I'm at the helm. I'm the CEO. I am the majority owner. And if the scope creep happens, it's on my watch. And it just means I'm not paying attention. So, but there's two kinds of scope creep that I would be worried about. The first one is looking always for a boogeyman so that you have a straw man to beat up, like, oh man, DEI is doing all these things or making up stories or extrapolating, that person got fired, it must be because they're white or they're conservative or they're Christian or whatever. Like, no, they probably were just fired because they're a really bad worker, right? And so there's this danger of, we need to have a cause. And if DEI just kind of, like, if America got back to merit, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh shoot, I don't have a cause. It's like, if you're again, fighting racism, or if you're fighting abortion, and all of a sudden that goes away and you don't need to fight it anymore. Well, there's a motivation to make sure that that problem still exists so that you have a job to try and solve that problem, right? So that's the first kind of scope creep. And the way that I solve for that is I want to be in a position where we are creating such great experiences for our customers that I don't have to have this boogeyman. I want people to forget that we were the non-woke job board. I want them to know us as the best job board, right? And that's how we need to continually be innovating using technology. We need to focus on providing the best thing. So that's the first kind of scope creep. The second kind of scope creep, which is by far the most common with organizations who start with a cause and they say, we are standing for this, particularly if they're a for-profit business, which Red Balloon is. Like, man, if we were to just compromise on this one thing, we could open up our market and get another 1,000 businesses. Or if we were just to compromise on this thing over here, we could get a big government grant, and all of a sudden I've got a bunch of money. And so that's where you see organizations kind of start to soften their edge. They lose their fun, their creativity, because they're constantly trying to make slight little compromises all over the place so that they can get more customers, get more money. So those are kind of the two kinds of scope creep. And honestly, the only way to deal with that is something that I have with my executive team every month. We're talking like, okay, are we still focused on what we're doing? At Red Balloon, we are very focused on three things. We want to bless our customers. We want our customers to be better at their job, whether they buy anything from us or not, whether they spend money or not. We want to bless our employees. We want our employees to be better people. Even if they go to another business, I want them to be a better employee for that business. We want them to be better people because they work here. And then number three, we want to bless the shareholders. But the shareholders, because we're under authority, we're okay with that. And I'm a major shareholder, so I'm a huge fan of blessing myself. But we have other shareholders. They're great. So the point is, we need to make sure that customers and employees come first. And if we're focusing on something bigger than just like, let's beat up the boogeyman of DEI or wokeness or whatever it is, then we're going to innovate and create really great products that delight our customers. And that's really where we need to go. I don't need to just be the woke job board. And I think the whole freedom economy, got good friends at Public Square or Revere Pay or Freedom Chamber or all these businesses out there that kind of emerged from the Biden COVID era lockdowns and all those other things. If they don't innovate, if they are just like, hey, we're values aligned. I have a crappy product. You want to buy my product? That business is going to fail soon. And they should, because the market's just going to work it out. There's no reason, as Amazon and Target start to back away from some of their crazy ideas, well, they're just a lot easier to buy from. So I'm going to go there,
Yeah.
right? So anyway, that point is we need to be innovating and excellent, or we really should go out of business.
I have a couple of questions. Well, first, I think a lot of, to Boris' points and your point is like, a lot of, in general, people that try to fight something, they want to at the same time make sure it still exists because they wouldn't have a job or a
That's
car
right.
if you don't. Uh, and I think, for the rest of the world that doesn't understand the Middle East, which I think are the majority, that's what's going on. The people
Right.
that are making a lot of money want to make sure that nothing happens, so they go. But I'm still want to understand, the part where with the how do you, like, let's say if a business tell you like I don't want any trans people, would you go for it? Like how what where's that line is, if that, like, let's say that trans person is the best person to do the job. But
Right.
before that, it's funny because when we start this whole conversation, a lot of things came to me is like, for example, two examples. One, I think what was the border the border guy, the
Tom
secretary, no,
Holman.
in
No,
the
no.
Biden administration.
Oh,
Um, it
yeah.
was the Spanish dude. What's his
Yeah,
name?
yeah.
So anyway, so
Yeah,
when
yeah.
when he was got hired, all you hear is like the first Latin, border control. That's all you hear.
That's
Nothing
right.
about him.
Right.
And now Marco Rubio is the first Latin, Secretary of
Secretary of
State.
State.
We
Yeah.
never even hear about it. Like Marco Rubio or don't, I don't have a problem with him. I don't like him, but I don't
Right.
have a problem with him. But you never hear but he's qualified. He's very qualified for the job.
For
But
sure.
that's the thing is like you don't even hear once. It's like it's, if you hear by coincidence that here's the first Latin Secretary of State, you'll be like, oh, okay, I had no idea. But
Cool.
just
Yeah.
because you
Right.
did the job. So what came to my mind is like if Biden hired a company like yours, he wouldn't choose Kamala, and we will have a stronger election,
Yeah.
and maybe Trump would not have won.
Yeah.
So it get,
Well, yeah.
it gets to that. Maybe I'm saying maybe, but
Right.
that's the thing is like
or
if
at least just a market process for choosing.
Yeah, market process for
Happen.
yeah, like let's call it even like primaries or an election or
yeah.
Right. That's what I'm alluding
something,
to.
something.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's how. But again, I think the point I made earlier is valid. That a lot of
Yeah,
things start to be good and start
right,
to solve a problem, then politicians take it over, and then once they take it over, they want to have that cause existing, so they start to enforce businesses to do certain things and spend a lot of money, say in DI and stuff like that, without actually.
right,
I took many courses and I see at work, none of these courses are amplified from the people that actually gave the courses, because
right.
it's just money. So that's why businesses drop a lot of the DI, not because I think they don't believe in it, but they believe there's a problem, but they don't think this is a solution, and they think there's a lot of stuff that they're spending a lot of money out of nothing. But
That's
there
right,
is a problem. So if you have like let's say a trans person or gay person or anything that
right,
reach out to you is like, hey, I can't get a job. Nobody's gonna hire me. First of all,
right.
or he or they the best person to do that? Would you take that employee that not hire them or not?
Yeah.
What would be
Okay.
the yeah
There was a lot of questions there.
yeah
I'll try and unpack a little bit.
sure
And I'll kind of hit that if a business says, "Hey, I want a trans employee," like that's really what I want right now. First of all, I'd say, look, our the demographic of our job seekers on Red Balloon probably not going to be a fit for you. As much as I'm a capitalist, I love taking money. I'm going to take your money, and you're not going to get good people. If your headliner is, we're looking for a trans person. Well, and my next question would be, and why?
yeah
Like, are you looking for a trans person who's a salesperson or a
yeah.
software developer? Like,
No, I
what's
think
the
I think
headliner,
my
right?
problem would be the opposite. If you say I don't want a trans person, like if somebody
Oh,
say I want a trans person, it's obviously they just want it to be part of a team that they want to show something, or maybe give a chance. I don't know, but I think the main problem is somebody say I don't want this guy,
yeah.
or
All
like
right.
something
So
I don't
I'll
want
I'll
a
pick on a
Christian.
specific example of
Yeah,
a business who actually wasn't a Red Balloon customer,
yeah,
and they were looking for a new software developer, and the manager said, "I don't want someone whose headliner is that they're gay." And I'm like, okay, well, unpack that for me. They're like, okay, so the issue is, um, if the person's headliner is Java developer, and you find out a year into the job, oh yeah, by the way, I'm gay, then the person would be like, I'm totally fine with that. I have no problem with that. But if you were hiring someone out of college and instead of saying I have a degree in computer science, they say I have literally slept with every girl at that college. I'd be
yeah,
like, well, like if that is the most important thing that you're describing about you, you're probably going to be a terrible employee.
yeah,
Right? And that's, here's some guy and he's like, I've done this thing. And I'm like, that's really terrible, but I'm not going to hire you if that's the first thing that you want to define yourself as, right? If someone is so desperate for everyone to know that they're gay and what they do in their bedroom, that has to be one of the first things that is on their resume, out of their mouth, as flamboyant as possible. This is my lifestyle. You better hire me because of that. That is a dangerous employee, whether it's trans or gay or whatever. I've got 9 wives at home, or whatever weird variation of like, this is my personal life has to be the first thing that's on my resume.
yeah,
That's a problem, right? I have hired a lot of people who I totally disagree with on social issues, whether it's what they do in their bedroom or whatever it is. But the focus was, are you going to be the best person to do this job? And if we can have a conversation about that, and then I find out about these other things 9 months, 6 months later, that means you were focused on your job, not focused on everybody knowing about this current this one aspect of your personal life. So if an employer says, look, I don't want to hire someone that's flamboyantly trans or flamboyantly gay because they're going to focus on that after they get their job rather than job, I can see where they're coming from. If they say, I want you to do a background check and make sure that this person is not a homosexual, or else I'm not going to hire him. I'm like, dude, you're a weirdo. Stop it. Do you want the best person? Or do you want the not the best person? Because I'm not even going to have that conversation with somebody. Does that make sense? So it
Yeah.
really is where the emphasis is. Are you emphasizing the value you can bring to the employer as an employee, or are you emphasizing
Yeah.
your personal preferences in the bedroom?
So here's
I
a
think emphasizing, like living life, if that's their value, like if they're good, my main attraction to your business model is like the best who does the job will get
That's
it.
right.
Because
That's
there's
right.
so many times. But I think even if somebody is like obviously gay, or obviously if it's or like promoting this more, I understand what you're saying if they're gonna focus on that more than the job, but they
Right.
wouldn't get to your company even there if they focus on that more than job. But if if they number one at the job and they live their life any way they want,
Right.
whatever,
I
except
think
obviously if the job itself, it's like it's different,
I think there's not a ton of conflict, right? Like I think it was a pretty rare, not rare, but it seems to be some sort of mass. I don't want to say hysteria, but it was unusual. It was an unusual time period. I think the last 3 or 4 years,
I would agree.
where again we created this system that was gainable and exploitable. Where like I think to most normal people that weren't of all political stripes, that weren't like too online or didn't become like super swept up and stuff. It's very strange to write, whatever immutable characteristics at the top of your cover letter or whatever.
That's
Like
right.
like I
yeah.
think that's a thing that again the market I think will hopefully solve on its own. What is your theory on where you might have a competing value,
Oh,
something
I'm
like
sorry, Boris. I just want to
yeah.
finish that point, and then we go
Oh,
to.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to
Yeah,
interrupt.
no, it's fine. Um, because I think, like for example, I'm involved a lot in sports, and I don't think, I don't believe that transgender should compete with girls and in
That's right.
any, but that's different. That's not.
That is different. That is
It's
different.
not little a job, but I feel like the reason I'm asking all the question because when I first heard about your company, when I first like start research, the first thing is like I feel like if somebody approaching from a certain angle, even the left or the right, like far left or far right, they're just gonna attack you and they're gonna try to find something wrong with your company, you
Yeah.
know? So that's why I'm asking all the questions to clear things up because the
Right.
if the core is what you're saying, which is get America to get the best employees, best employers, be business, be back to where like everything is great, the best employer, get the best employee, that would be great. But that's what I'm saying, like from all like say videos or stuff like I watch, a lot of people like I feel like they either try to like put you under a certain category, even far right or far left,
That's right.
and that's why I wanted to make sure, that these things are valid because this could be if we manage to find solve a problem. I mean, it's not your job or your company's mission, but if there is a solution to all this while there's things in workplace, this company could be an example for other industries as well,
Right. Right.
Uh,
Yeah. I mean, the mission of Red Balloon is to redeem the world of work. Gallup says that 67% of employees are either disengaged at work or actively disengaged at work. Basically, people don't like their job anymore. And I think there's a variety of reasons. There's bad bosses out there. There's HR policies that make it miserable to be at work. But we think work is a good thing. We think it brings dignity to individuals. And you talk about sports, and I also deeply love sports. I play hockey. I've got a son who runs. I've got a son who plays basketball. I've got a son who plays lacrosse. So we're deep in the sports scene. But what brings dignity to a person? Well, generally, it's doing something really hard. Like if you do something really easy, it's like, okay, yeah, no big deal. Nobody cares about it. But when you push yourself to do something really hard, you get excellent at a thing and then are able to accomplish something really hard and ideally do that with other people. That's why I love team sports. That's what brings dignity into an individual, whether it's a guy or a gal, right? And so that's what work should be. And I think work should be hard and you should accomplish great things together. And if you can get to that spot, then you're going to you're going to achieve that dignity as a person because you've done hard things at work. The other stat that's really terrifying is that 75% of employers in America have had a labor-based lawsuit in the last 5 years. So 75% of the 34 million small to medium-sized businesses in America have had a labor-based lawsuit in just the last 5 years. So, one of the things Red Balloon does in our recruitment process, which is, priced way below the market value because we've innovated on how we do recruitment, is we help employers not worry about those lawsuits. And this is where I'll put myself in a bit of a
I think that's a
pigeonhole.
major thing. That's a major
Yeah,
thing.
but
All my
but
friends that own businesses have a issue with that.
no, it's a really big deal. And especially if you're a small business, you don't interview very often. You could ask one bad question in an interview and it might cost you your business. In fact, I talked to a guy in California and that's exactly what happened. The person brought a discrimination lawsuit against him because he asked something about her age. And she brought an age discrimination lawsuit and won enough money that he just shut his business down. So that's the other thing that Red Balloon's doing is we have a labor lawyer on staff whose name is Laura, and saying Laura the labor lawyer is cool. So Laura the labor lawyer helps keep our businesses, our customers out of legal trouble because we're going to be the initial screen for all the employees that are coming to their organization. There's a couple of things that we're doing that are innovating in the space, but at the end of the day, we want to redeem the world of work because we think that's how America goes forward. That's how we get better, and that's how individuals gain the dignity of hard work.
Go ahead,
So
Boris. Sorry.
yeah, that made me think of another question, but I'll ask the first one I was thinking of first, just because I'm curious. Obviously, the free market's a value for you. Seems
Yes.
like patriotism and American pride is a value for you. There
Yep.
becomes obviously when you have sort of the Elon versus Bannon-esque philosophy conflict between, you have the free market. You guys have a stance on H-1B1s and on the idea of, in general is it the free market within certain standards within American society? Is it the free market while maybe balancing conflicting values with one taking the lead?
Right.
Do you have a philosophy on that?
Yeah, we want a free and virtuous society. And if you just have a completely free society, if you're a complete libertarian, then you have anarchy in a minute. And so it has to be free and virtuous. And there's a lot of economic thought, and I subscribe to a lot of the Austrian thinking. I love Thomas Sowell. I love Milton Friedman. And so I think a lot about economics, but we want a free and a virtuous society because if you have complete freedom, then I have the freedom, if I'm bigger and stronger, to go beat up or kill someone else and no one does anything about it because it's just freedom. Like my freedom is my power, and that is entirely unhealthy. So I'm a free market guy. I'm not a complete libertarian. There shouldn't be any rules anywhere guy, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
But connected with that, I do have opinions, and you'll find that Red Balloon, we try and think critically about these issues and not just try and follow a party line. And Donald Trump Jr. is actually on my he made an investment in Red Balloon because he believes in what we're doing. So, but that being said, I'm not a huge fan of tariffs. One way or the other, I think they're an interesting negotiating tool, and I think that's primarily how Trump's using them. And I am a fan of immigration. I think there should be legal immigration, and I think even H-1Bs, we should let the best person for the
Yeah.
job get the job.
This is actually
And
was yeah my
yeah,
quick few questions because we're gonna run out of time
oh
quick.
yeah, yeah.
Is it national or international company? Red Balloon and
Red Balloon is focused on America right now because you got to start somewhere small that you can manage.
okay, because I feel like a lot of also international work, companies focus
Yeah.
more in bringing people here
Yes.
versus getting employees for American somewhere else, or
Yeah.
also, which is a huge market, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
Well, and I've
again,
had, I've had
if I
requests
go to
from
sports, baseball, hockey, stuff like
yeah.
that,
Right.
American coaches get a lot of, but there's nothing like that. But
And
But
I've
let's
had requests from 12 other countries around the world, people from those countries saying, when's Red Balloon going to come here?
yeah.
So there's a demand for freedom in the workplace everywhere.
So to touch also on Boris' point, I want to talk about Doge and Musk and immigration because I feel both Boris and I are immigrants, right? Right,
Hmm.
Boris? Are you
That's right.
admitting that on live?
Yeah, will you admit to that?
You
Yeah.
wanna
Guilty,
Where's your
guilty as
paperwork?
charged.
you wanna admit that, or are you
Yeah,
scared now?
right.
But
That one I'm okay with.
yeah. Uh, and I feel like, the one thing about immigration or immigrants is that when they come in, and I think that's one of the reasons that a lot of people were surprised, like how all these people, why would you vote for Trump or all these people vote for Trump? Because a lot of values actually could be the same.
Right.
And that's one of the things is like about immigrants and work. They work very hard. We work very hard, in
Hmm.
anything that you do, especially first generation, second
Right.
generation, third generation, stuff like that. And not only in and that's why, the problem with the criminal immigration now is like they given a bad rap because here when you first move in, either your first generation, second generation, it's like the three things that you do. First, you have to be great in school, you have to study, and
Yep.
second, you have to stay away from trouble. You never do anything at all, and you work hard. And that's
Yep.
what you see, and that's what I see. And to go back to that, I think there is a little also the fine line, just like DI with immigration. Where you
Yes.
can get, we don't want the criminal immigration, obviously, or we don't want open border like things are happen. People have to suffer coming
Right.
here, just like we did.
Right.
Damn it. Uh, and the other thing, like thoughts in Musk and Doge and firing. I mean, there's a lot of Actually, Boris, I want to ask you also your opinion about Musk and Doge. So maybe we'll go with you first, and then we'll give the mic to Andrew after that regarding the immigration, Doge, both of them. What do you think of?
My opinion, I think in theory,
Your voice is kind of lower than it was.
it's lower, like
Yeah,
quiet.
yeah. Now it's back. Yeah.
Okay. In theory, I am in favor. I am waiting to see the results because I think they're judging by Elon Musk's Twitter, he sort of created a gray area between being an activist for particular ideas where not everything he's saying is factually accurate and what he does on the back end there that I'm not aware of really all the details and I don't take very seriously a lot of the noise being made about it because it all seems like stuff that happens in like a large scale reorganization of a company. So when I see little articles like, oh, they fired these guys and now they got to rehire these guys, it's like, yeah, it probably at scale is more efficient to do it this way and not scrutinize every particular thing and find some metrics where it's done by, and then you're going to make mistakes and you're going to fix it. Maybe the result will be that all the cuts to payroll are like not even worth the amount that we save because payroll is a relatively small part of the actual problem when it comes to the size of the government. But right now, like I'm more with a lot of this stuff, obviously Russia, Ukraine, I'm paying attention to. A lot of it, like I want to see the results. So I'm not really like
Right.
obsessing over parts of the process that like sound chaotic or not, because it's just there's so many
But what about
levels
what
of
about specifically in the workplace? Because if you go any place, any business,
yeah.
anywhere, and hire anybody, they're gonna find fraud. They're gonna find, it's just part of it. But sometimes you don't understand it. Sometimes maybe you hired somebody that for some reason a shell company or something like that. Um,
Yeah,
uh,
but I mean, like even the stuff that they're finding, I mean, some of it is on its face absurd. Some of it is maybe like justifiable in some particular way. But again, like we, it's been a lot of politicians that have ran on trying to tackle this problem. So the fact that somebody's tackling it and it's a mess, I'm gonna wait and see where the chips fall before I start obsessing over every little aspect of it.
Andrew, what's your thoughts on Doge, Musk, and
Yeah,
firing?
and all that. Well,
Yeah,
first thing is Clinton fired 400,000 people
yeah.
when he came to office. Now, it was a little bit different, and he brought back some of his contractors, but it is actually very common for a new administration to come in and clean house a little bit. So I don't know why it's actually super newsworthy. This actually happens like every 4 to 8 years. Like,
Yeah.
okay. I think that's the first thing. I
I
think the
mean, we
second
know
thing,
why it's that newsworthy because anything they're gonna do in this administration or Biden administration,
yeah,
find somebody,
Oh,
so.
I know, and we're in a time when everybody has to know everything that's going on. I do think that the USAID stuff was the most interesting. The fact that Ben Stiller was paid $4 million to go and have a photo op with Zelensky to try and build up Zelensky as a celebrity. I think like holy moly, why are we spending our money on that kind of stuff? I think that is none of our business. And so anything we can do to cut that is amazing. And the reality is we have $1 trillion in interest payments a year in America. We simply at some point are going to hit a debt to GDP ratio that makes it so that our country will go bankrupt, and we will kind of fade away into the annals of history. I mean, that is what's going to happen if we don't have a major change. And so I'm excited that they're at least trying to go after it. I'm not a huge fan of executive orders, actually. The form of government that the founding fathers designed in America was we have the three branches of government. We don't just have an executive who can do whatever they want. Sounds a little bit like a king to me. That being said, Joe Biden did a lot of it, and so I think Trump is just trying to undo a lot of that. So it's not ideal. It's not the way it should be done. But we're a sick country, we're a sick economy, and we need hard medicine. And I think they're administering the hard medicine we need.
I will
But
say
and
also, just to add that the opposition, for whatever reason, to me, keeps also like highlighting some of the most unsympathetic examples as like the red flags that they're raising. Like the two that come to mind, I listen to the Daily pretty often. It's the New York Times podcast. And the tone, it wasn't even like specific examples, but the tone with which they would describe the firings in the government as like inhumane, like beyond the pale, to me only reinforced the idea of like how the mentality was so comfortable with the idea that these people are unfireable, how they were so divorced from what everyone else is living through, where layoffs at companies happen all the time. To me, it was like this is wholly unsympathetic that you guys think you're so beyond the same market
well,
forces that the rest of us are.
I think
Totally agree.
there's a lot of stories that's very heartbreaking and stuff like that. But I think that these stories lose their values from, when they make everything seems like this,
Yeah, it's Chicken Little.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
other
So,
one I
but
saw, they
but
were
I tell you, I don't think this is. I think cutting and stuff like that. I think it's good, and every administration does it. But I think there's so much that you like when they say, "Oh, they pay $70,000 for a play in Iraq or cartoon in Iraq." Like I know for sure, like I almost know that this money is not really for a cartoon in Iraq. There's some kind of
No.
operation that's happening. And there's a great example that somebody was saying in the other day is like if Elon Musk, let's say he's in Israel now and he's looking at the stuff in Israel. And then he said, wait a minute, why are we paying $5 million to a pager company who use a fucking pager anymore? I'm cutting this. A year later, that operation would not have happened. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So there's
Yeah,
a
for
lot
sure.
of things that America also involved in foreign policies that people don't understand, and you don't have enough clearance to understand this big picture. That's my problem with him. I would respect it if he goes to Congress and start cutting stuff from Congress, government stuff like that. But
Yeah.
we're agreed there, I think. But also, like, it wouldn't be the USAID running finance programs necessarily for like the CIA, right? That
I
would
think USAID was made for the CIA. But anyway, we'll see.
I see, I
100%.
see.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
last thing is, Andrew, walk us through quickly the application of like somebody, like say I'm employee or employers, like what
Yeah.
what what do you do for them exactly?
Yeah, and I know we're tight on time. So yeah, redballoon.work, you can go there. If you're an employee, everything is free for you if you're a job seeker because we believe you're in we'll call it a vulnerable position because you're trying to find a job, you're trying to support your family, pay your mortgage, feed your kids, all the things. So everything is free for you, and we have a lot of resources. So you can download the Employee Bill of Rights and Responsibilities written by our own Laura, the labor lawyer. And it's going to give you a lot of ammunition when it comes to if you're an employer who is curb stomping your freedoms, what are you allowed to push back on? And so I would encourage you to go and check that out. And those are all free resources for job seekers. You can fill out a job seeker profile And then employers are going to probably find you, which is kind of a cool thing. So you don't have to spend all your time and energy applying to jobs. You can clearly apply to jobs. There I am, very good looking young man. And if you're an employer, there's three things that we can do for you. You can post a job for as little as $200 a month. You can post three jobs for $200 a month, and you can be in front of the over 100,000 unique pro freedom job seekers that are on there every month. And we find people all the time. And I will tell you, I've run a lot of businesses. It's the only business where I get unsolicited thank you notes from perfect strangers. People saying, "You have changed the trajectory of my family. You have saved my marriage because of the job that I found at Red Balloon." Because when you have a job where you're allowed to work hard and have joy, it's unbelievable. So if you're an employer, $200 a month, post your jobs. It might change your life. That's the first thing. If you want us to take over the recruitment of a specific position and do a nationwide search, help you with a compensation review, a job posting, actually do the first interview, reach out to people. We have filled positions as diverse as CEOs and down to secretaries and assistants. We're doing, I think, 50 positions right now. We charge under $10,000 to do a complete recruitment process for your organization. So if you're worried about that lawsuit that I mentioned earlier, we can take that concern off your plate for under $10,000 and bring you values aligned people. So, and then the last thing is we have an applicant tracking system. And ATSs are kind of like a bad word in the job seeker world because they're usually used to screen people out who actually were qualified for the job. And so we are thinking differently about how we do our ATS. We believe that hiring is a distinctly human function. You're a human hiring another human, and we shouldn't just let the algorithms and the AI take over. We're going to use those tools, but we want to make sure that we think differently about how the hiring process works. So we're doing some really cool innovations on that, but I can't tell you, I'd have to shoot you, and that'd be awkward over Zoom.
Can I add one quick
Sure,
question?
yeah, good.
Yeah.
So, like you said, I have friends that are in, hiring positions, and I know AI is used extensively for this stuff now, to
Yes.
where, people will coach you on your resume to make sure to include these words so it doesn't get filtered out.
Right.
With what you guys are doing, it's so I'm trying to think of the right word. It's there's words that have such different connotations, even nationally, right? Where it became like in Brooklyn and certain liberal circles, like you said, an American flag is looked at as like a dog whistle for being right wing in a particular way, right? But there's also this kind of like, I've talked to people who've steel manned that for me, which to me, that's a crazy thing to me. But then when I talk to somebody and they steel man that for me, they're like, well, in other areas or in other contexts, when you have somebody with 5 American flags on their across their body and one on their car,
Yeah,
it
right.
starts to, again, like you said, if the first thing about you is that you're gay and not that you're a computer programmer, there's a little bit of, if the first thing about you is that you're a red-blooded American and not a computer programmer, there
That's
might be a
exactly
little
right.
something there too.
Yes.
So do you guys have something that deals with that in terms of like that in Brooklyn, New York, something might have a different connotation. Like even anti-woke, I feel like in Brooklyn, New York has a very different connotation than in Ohio or
Oh, I'm
whatever
sure.
else.
Yeah.
How do you guys, is that something like just the algorithm accounts for, or is there some other way that you think about it?
Yeah, and I'll try not to get too deep into this, but here's the reality right now. Using the woke word again, HR tech is by far the most woke industry in our country. So if you're a payroll provider, if you're an HRAS, if you're an ATS, and in fact, some of our customers found they were using Greenhouse, which Forbes calls the friendliest, the DEI has the best DEI algorithms, is Greenhouse. It's a big ATS, applicant tracking system. That's what it's called, applicant tracking system, ATS. So, so they have the best DEI algorithms. But one of our customers realized they were filtering out white conservative candidates and not even showing them to the hiring manager, not based on any of these other words. They'd go and look at their LinkedIn profile automatically and be like, we don't want that because we need a higher DEI score. Well, clearly those businesses were not thrilled with that. They're not primarily trying to hire white men, but they very much want to hire the best people for the job, and they don't like some section of the demographics to be hidden from them because the software is using its algorithm to judge their hiring practices. So when Red Balloon thinks about hiring, we do not want it to be based on any of these race, gender, sexuality categories. It obviously needs to focus on skills and merit. But we also do some really interesting things because one of the problems people have with ATSs, and again, I'll try not to get too nerdy here, is they'll apply to a job and an algorithm will look at their resume and they'll look at the job posting and they'll say, look, the skills don't match up, reject that resume. But the issue is, often the person actually could do that job, but it requires some sort of human explanation. And so what we'll do is someone applies for that job and we'll be like, okay, the algorithm will say, thank you for applying to this job. It appears you don't have Node.js in your resume, and that's one of the key things that's needed for this job. Can you give us an explanation of why you still think you should be considered for this job? Well, what does that do? That humanizes the person. It's not just a list of skills and a list of requirements. They match up or not. You're kicked out. You're just a cog in the wheel. So we're going to think differently about that. We're not going to try and make a cultural judgment one way or the other with an algorithm. I think there's a mistake. You know, if someone is draped with American flags or communist flags or whatever, like those are human decisions that need to be made. And so we're not going to have our algorithms make those decisions. A lot of woke HR tech does. I think that that's a human decision, but we are going to humanize the whole process to make life a lot easier for that hiring manager.
That's awesome. He was looking at you when he was saying communist flag, Boris.
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly.
Well, Andrew, thank you so much. This is great. I told you it's going to be a great conversation. Always great. Would love to have you again soon. Last question, and then you can share your social media where people can find you,
Yeah, yeah,
Boris,
yeah.
Andrew. Uh, the name, Red Balloon. What is it?
Red balloon. Okay, so have you ever been on a hot air balloon? Hot air balloon?
No.
No. Okay. So if you go on a hot air balloon, which I have, and I do skydiving and all the stupid things that bungee jumping, I like that kind of stuff. So,
Wow.
so if you go on a hot air balloon, it's really interesting because it's perfectly quiet and still up there because you're going with the wind. You have very little control and you're going somewhere, but it's very quiet, it's very still, and then you're going to land somewhere. And actually, it's kind of funny. So I was on this hot air balloon in England with three of my five children, and we are coming in for a landing, and the balloon guy says to me, "Oh, by the way, we're about to land, and you're the seatbelt for the kids. You need to make sure there's going to be a rough landing. They might bounce out and get hurt." I'm like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, you got about 10 seconds. Go." He's like, "Line them up on the basket and pin them against them." Like, "What? What?" And of course I did it because I had to. The kids were like, "Oh, it's so much fun," and I'm like holding on for dear life. And he's like, "Okay, that was great. Good job." I'm like a little warning would have been nice. Anyway, so a hot air balloon, it feels like the job search process. You're going somewhere, you don't have a lot of control, it's very quiet, you get ghosted all the time, and people are going to red states, they're going to red businesses, they're going to places where they can be free, and they're using Red Balloon to get there. So that's why it's called Red Balloon.
Oh, gotcha. All right. Thank you so much, Boris, where people can find you, follow you.
At the Boris K on all the socials.
And
All the
Andrew.
socials. Yeah, I'm on all the socials, but I'll tell you, just follow me on LinkedIn. That's really where I put most of my stuff because I'm a business guy. And I basically try and have a meaningful business tip or employment tip every single day on LinkedIn. So follow me. I am the only Andrew Crapuchettes you'll find, surprisingly enough.
And it's redballoon.work, everybody. Not
Redballoon.work because we
work.
we thought com sounded too much like communism, and we don't want communism. We want hard
Yeah.
work.
Yeah. All right, guys. Thank you so much. That was awesome. Thank you. Appreciate Life in America podcast.